Okay, we're recording. So, when if you're getting messages about running out of memory and stuff up here, you can change your scalability. By default, I think it's on high, and you could put it down to medium, and probably the errors will go away and it'll speed up. That's the resolution that you have in here in the editor. But your game might also slow down, so you can check some things, like you can go into the go into your viewport on the pancake symbol on the very left of the top of the viewport and turn on show FPS. And once you turn that on, if you hit play, let's see, maybe I didn't, let me just check and make sure I turned it on. Okay, there it is. Okay, so you can see it on the left there. And yeah, mine's lagging right now a little bit. It's actually pretty low. You want it to be above 30 frames per second. And so optimizing that, there's some things that maybe I need to look at, like my grass and stuff. But yesterday I was running this and it was at 50 frames per second, and I haven't done that much since then. So it could be that part of this is happening because of Zoom, because I'm streaming on Zoom and it's taxing my computer, and there's other processes going on that's taxing my computer. And so I'm dropping frame rates here because the scene was at 50, between 40 and 50 frames per second, which is acceptable for a game. Film is 24 frames per second. Video is usually 30 frames per second. A lot of games are at 60 frames per second or above, but you don't have to have that. You can be in the 40s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and it still look decent. Right now, it's kind of low, and I'm actually not sure why it's kind of low right now. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that back off again, but you can check that. You should check that every once in a while and see what's happening with that. And then to start optimizing, go look at the 3D assets that you're bringing into the scene. And like I just brought in this one here, which is like a ram's head skull. And if I find that in here, this one right here, and I open up the static mesh for that, I can check and see if I've turned on nanite support. And I have actually. I did remember to turn it on. Also, certain things, if you're not going to want to collide with something, like these are actually pickup objects, I don't want to collide with them. So I would want to go in and find the collision area and make sure that I turn it to no collision, because that's actually going to optimize that a little bit, to make sure that, because collisions take some calculation, and if you're going to have several of these in your scene, it's going to be looking for those collisions unless you turn it off. So turning that off and saving is going to be important. So, when you do that, you can go in, and I've also mentioned this before, to your window and switch from lit to nanite visualization and go to something like triangles, and you'll see all the things that are set to nanite in your scene. And, if you're trying to see if you're setting most of the stuff to nanite, then this will tell you that. And if there's certain things missing, like I know that there's some of the grass I haven't set, so I need to go back and look at my different grasses. I set one of them, and I can see those coming up, but the other two I didn't set, and there's a lot of grass in there. So that might help if I go set those things. So I'm going to go back to lit, and I want to, I'll come back to this. Let's just go look at a couple of other of the videos. So this one is looking pretty good. It's got a decent looking skybox. It looks like it was fixed. Some of the, that moon, the Photoshop didn't do a great job of making that round. You could probably cut and paste a round moon into that in Photoshop and sort of cover that up so that it looks actually round. But I mean, it might not look too weird in the game. That one looks pretty round. You got some nice looking water and clouds. And if your water, the water's another thing that I don't know if I mentioned this, but all of these things have details and settings. And one of the things that I often do with my water is I go in and change the detail setting of that to make it so that it doesn't look quite so big, the waves. Because sometimes the waves are just coming in abnormally large in your scene, depending on how big your landscape is. And so, and compared to the character, they're like tsunami waves. They're gigantic. So you probably are going to want to find your water body ocean and go into your details and find where it talks about the wave settings. So you've got a user curves and stuff like that. What I look for is specifically the wave settings. Yeah, there it is. And I take this wave attenuation, I turn it way up. And the more higher you turn it, actually the lower the waves get. Like it scrunches the waves down. And they tend to look more normal by raising it. Like I've got mine at 7,488. And that's way above the default setting. And you find that if you pull that to the right, it's going to push the waves down and make it look more normal. So I can see that there's, a layered texture being used on this ground plane. And you got distinct areas of green and stone. So those are going to look much better once you go in and put some actual mesh on top of those. And at the ground level, they look pretty good. It's looking pretty good. It looks like a tropical island type of thing. So I think if you find the right meshes to go with that, it's going to look good. Now, one thing is you want to look at like from this angle here, where the light's coming down, it's too shiny. your grass is too shiny. So it's good to kind of check from different angles and go into your shader for the landscape. If I go back to my project again and I find my shader for my landscape, let's just go grab the landscape. It's got the material on it right here, and I want to go find it. So I'm going to click the little folder next to that. It'll take me to where the landscape material is. That's the material instance. I can open it up and go and set things like the roughness. That can take away some of that shine. Now my landscape's different because my landscape's not grass, it's mostly snow, and I do want some shine on the snow. But grass generally doesn't have that kind of shine. So I would go ahead and turn on the roughness settings here and maybe give it a minimum roughness of like 0.5 or something like that. And you'll see it. You can just open this up, pull it to the side, turn those on. I mean, if I do it right now for my landscape, and if I'm looking towards the sun, that actually looks good with my snow. But let's say I turn this on. And as I pull this up, I should see some change on that. So I'm not seeing a change on mine. Let me try specular. So you know what? I think I have this set in another scene, and actually I can show you that scene anyway. I think it would be worth looking at where I did set that. And let me just go see what I set it to. Because I have grass in that scene and I was having the same problem. So let me go open that other scene and take a look at that real quick. I'll just set this back to the way it was. Okay, so this other scene here, I'm doing this for the other class that I teach, and it's a night scene, more later at night, and it has grass and stuff in it. So it's kind of like a Northern Ireland or Scottish type of scene with a 360 background. I actually made this background from Midjourney instead of Blockade Labs, and you can see the grass there. And there's some rocks and a road and things like that too. So the light is coming from that way, as you can see. And if I let's just zoom over here. Say right there. If I look at, let me see what I said on this one, because I'm pretty sure I did change that in the landscape material. So actually, I didn't use the roughness. I used the base specular to take away the shininess. And I reduced that to like 0.04, which I think the default is probably 1. And that took away the shininess from the ground there. If it's 0.041, and if I put that back up to 1, let me just pull it out here so we can see it. See what that looks like. So it pretty much has a similar look to the background back here. I mean, there is a little shininess on it. But if I set that back up to 1, let me just see how shiny it gets. Yeah, it gets a lot more shiny. A lot more shiny. So, I mean, you might want that. I mean, if you feel like that's gonna be more like how the ground is, and if you think that it matches your background. But actually, I think if I put that back down to 0.04 again, that's a little bit of shininess. And I do think that that merges with my background a little better. So I would leave it there for my scene. Maybe even a little higher, 0.05. Okay, so this one, I really don't have the same kind of stuff in this one as I do in the other one, but I'm still got a bunch of procedural generated meshes in here. If I select my volume, you can see all the grass, you can see the rocks are there as well. All of this is being procedurally generated. And then there's an area of exclusion where I'm building my house there, which I talked about last time, that you can put in there. Yeah. Why did you copy the PCG volumes? Oh, okay. So yes, they would share the same graph because if you copy it, the graph is going to be plugged in. So your volume, one of the first things that you do is you tell it where your graph is and connect it to your graph. And to find that, you have to, it's actually buried in there a little bit. Let me see if it shows up here. Okay, so you're probably going to have to do a search for it. And I believe it's it might be instance. I'll have to look at my notes. Yeah, here it is. So yeah, if you do a search on instance, it'll open up the instance area, graph instance, and that's where my graph is being plugged in. So if you duplicated your volume for whatever reason, I mean, if you're not going to share the same graph, I think it'd be probably just as easy to create a new volume. But either way, even if you duplicate your volume, you want to plug in a different graph if you want different stuff. You could have the same graph in there if you wanted to create the same things. Yeah, yeah. If you duplicate the graph instead of creating a new one, then you're going to want to change all the stuff in it. The meshes, the static mesh spawner on the far right of the graph of each of the things is going to be different there. Okay. So let me go ahead and don't need to, I'll go ahead and save it. And go back to the other one. All right, so let's take a look at another one. Work in progress that's already in here. Look at Travis's.
All right, this is my work in progress map for the Unreal Engine demo. It is based on a crescent moon shape with a little bit of some islands.
Right.
I'm going for a kind of spooky horror aesthetic. For my mesh scans, I used more of a leafy, dried grass texture, and it kind of melds into a straw wheat, dry grass texture, and a little bit of some dirt rocky pathway just to kind of match up with a little bit of the road. And here's what it looks like in third person. Try to get as much variation as possible on the grass and tree trunks. Give it that spooky horror aesthetic.
So it looks pretty cool.
As you try to escape
You just see if
off this
pause
haunted
it
island.
Frame that's not blurry. Okay, there we go. So the only thing is that you're getting some very regular, almost looks like crops as far as that grass. And I don't know for sure if it's the grass, the mesh PCG generated graph, or whether it's the texture map, or both. I would say that it looks pretty good close by. And I don't think you could really probably see too well the material back that far. So it probably is the 3D meshes that are being generated by the PCG graph. So I would look at your clumping, to try and maybe vary that a little bit. And it might not make a difference once you put more stuff in there. It might even cover up that distance, if you put some strategically placed rocks or other larger, there's larger pieces of static mesh that you can get from Megascans that are going to, you know, kind of be like mountains or something, or big rocks, or other trees and stuff. And your background is kind of surreal in that that house looks really big and almost like it's made of clouds. Like these are very wispy looking in the background. It could be the fog, but it could also be that your image is very sort of kind of doesn't have a whole lot of contrast to it. It's kind of neat looking. It's kind of, you know, like I said, it's almost looks like it's not a real house, but some kind of house in the clouds. But if you want it to look more like a real house, then it's not going to look that big compared to your landscape. And that's something where probably you have to work on the scale of your landscape, because it didn't look that big, but like from this angle, from the ground level, it does. So it might be that you maybe need to look at a different background HDR image that where the house would be smaller. But I do like this look. It's pretty cool looking as far as these dead trees and stuff. And the character looks good in that too. So I do think, you know, could have a good horror aesthetic. Raphael.
For my Unreal Island, I decided to go with a tropical beach aesthetic. Some of the mega scans I used were the sand texture, and I also added some seaweed grass along the map. I plan on adding more vegetation as well as ocean theme artifacts to help establish this aesthetic more.
That's a pretty cool aesthetic from ground level. I mean, it looked pretty bare from way up high, but when you get down to ground level, it's pretty effective. The contrast between the pink sky and the green grass. It definitely has and you got some pink lighting in there. I can see it on his shirt. Definitely has a beach islandy feel to it. Like out from up here, that background doesn't look like much, but from down here, it looks really good. So it does have sort of almost a painterly look to it. But it really works with that lighting that you have on your character. So that's really, really good. I do think you could probably have some, I mean, depending on where you're going with that, I think you could have, I want everybody to try the PCG stuff. I want to see some PCG generated stuff in there. So you have grass in there, that's great, but you know, maybe there could be some other things as well, if it makes sense with your idea or your story.
For the overall shape of my island, it kind of has a boot-like shape. And through the use of sculpting, I added mountain-like bumps and smaller bumps all around the map to give it a more rougher feel rather than just a plain grid. The paintbrushes that I used were
So you can really see from up here above how shiny everything is. And so that's where you're going to want to go in and adjust that specularity or something to make it
some type of
not quite that shiny
island where
it's still
my
noticeable
character
even
is
down at the
abandoned
ground
on the
level
island.
here. And it's especially noticeable with the tiling, because I think the tiling needs to be set down to like 0.1 or 0.2, because you're getting a lot of noticeable tiling, even at the ground level, at the character level. You clearly do have multiple texture maps being blended here. It's just the tiling is too small, which is a bigger number. It's probably still set to the default 1. So make sure you work on that. This is pretty neat. It's very unique. Almost looks like a fort. Interesting stuff going on there with these squares. You probably don't want them on the slopes like that, so you might want to use the exclusion stuff that I showed last time for slopes. And I think probably the tiling is also needs to be worked on a little bit here, but you'd have to see it from ground level. So on your demo, make sure that you show it from the character's point of view. Here's what I was talking about with in Stella's, that you have these big meshes that you can put into your scene, that if you turn them to nanite and you duplicate them and rotate them, you can put multiple ones there. They'll look different if you rotate them, and they're going to look really nice, and they'll cover up problems that you might have in your background. So that looks pretty good with the grass and everything, and the different materials look pretty natural looking. I'm getting a lot of lag here. But it's an interesting looking environment. The background is very kind of painterly looking in some places. It almost looks black and white, or like drawn, like right there. Yeah. So maybe some fog that would make that sort of blend, some cooler fog type of thing, or you could try to, in some places it just looks a little strange. Those bright yellow areas aren't matching the foreground. I mean, that could be an aesthetic that you want.
Hey everyone, I'm Molly,
just,
and this is my
if
work
you're
in
gonna
progress.
do something unusual, make sure that it looks like it's purposeful and not a mistake. You know, that you clearly did want a painterly look in the background that's not going to be matching, or is going to contrast with the foreground look. Now this really matches well. That background has some, I mean, it does kind of look like a 19th century painting, but it has that details that match well with the trees and other things that are in the foreground. It's actually pretty nice looking clouds going on there, and some lighting effects. You know, that's looking really good in this one. And with the metahuman in there, that looks nice. I mean, that's some pretty dramatic looking clouds. Looks really good. Again, looks like some lag happening here. So the biggest problem with this one is it doesn't look like the landscape is matched up with the HDRI backdrop. This big circular thing is the HDRI backdrop, and you can see that it's not surrounding the land. And you really have to have it if you want it to look like a night sky. You have to have it circling the part that is going to be your scene or your gameplay area. So you either need to make that HDRI backdrop a lot bigger and maybe move it a little bit so it's centered over this mountainous area, or make the landscape smaller. Probably it's going to be easier to make the HDRI backdrop bigger. But when you make it bigger, it's going to go down. And so you might have to push it back up with some of the settings in the HDRI backdrop. But that's the biggest problem I see here, is that it's looks like it's not really placed correctly. And then the lighting and everything, you're going to want to work on that to make it sort of feel like a nighttime scene that fits that backdrop.
In keeping with my historical sites theme, the aesthetics of this game world are inspired by ancient ruins in the desert. The main structure
background
is
looks really
situated among
good.
those sand dunes.
Looks like a
Sand materials complement the desert skybox, and palm-like tree materials inspired by
tropical
oases
stuff. That
will be
makes
planted.
sense. So here's where
Additional sculpted sand dunes and palm-like tree
the
materials
water
will be planted.
looks a little bit like maybe you might want to adjust it slightly. It's kind of, I mean, it's close, but it might be moving a little bit more than it would be in that space. And that looks really nice, these mountains. With the background.
Additional sculpted sand dunes will be added to.
So here's where it's not matching. And that's going to be a matter of getting in, really working with the lighting a little bit, I think, to try and match the lighting in that background, which is pretty high contrast. And then there's some very distinctive like textures in that background that I think you could probably find in the Megascans. They look more rocky than sandy. So you might want some sand dunes in the front, but then as you get a little further, you might want some rocky type of things like this so that it transitions a little smoother. Character looks good. So yeah, and then this little hump here, that's going to go away as you sculpt. But if it doesn't, if you're not going to sculpt this area, the best thing to do would be to go into your settings of your water body ocean and change the this area right here, the fall off settings to width instead of angle, because the hump usually comes from it being set to angle. And when you put it to width, if you got a nice wide width here, that hump usually disappears. So, okay. All right, so yeah, everybody's having a little bit of problems with texture streaming and running out of memory, so we'll probably need to talk more about optimization as we go along. Try to reduce that problem. Okay, so keep working on those. Try to get all of your elements in there. You can keep tweaking them until this project is due, but you're going to want to have those elements in there early on so you can start revising them, get some feedback on them. Okay, so what I want to do today is I want to go over how to do a pickup dynamic in your game. That's something that we're going to start with as far as gameplay dynamics. And it's similar to what we had in our previous project. And I want to kind of show you how you would do those pickups inside of Unreal Engine. So there's going to be involved some different kinds of putting in blueprints and creating connections. So make sure that you have a project. Hopefully you have your project with the MetaHuman that you could follow along and kind of get it, the basics of it done. Even if it's not your pickup that you're going to use, you can always change the static mesh later, but you'll have the blueprint if you do it today with me, or if you'll have the video. I'm recording this, so you could do it later, but wouldn't be bad to get it done now. So I'm going to go ahead and I have my scene open, and let's take a look at what that looks like. What we're going to do today. So I've got, you can see that I've got these pickup objects in my scene, game objects in my scene. And if I hit play, I can see them over there spinning. I'm gonna run over there, and I want to pick these up. I've got 3 of them, and when I run into the first one, I hear a sound of a wolf howling, and I get stag skulls collected 1. And if I do another one, there's 2. It's creepy, yes. So you could do a bloop or something, a pickup sound if you wanted to, but I wanted to do something that would be more of this aesthetic that I'm kind of building up. I had originally thought aliens, but I'm not sure I'm going to go with aliens. I might go with some kind of like spooky kind of you know, I don't know, spirit creatures, or I don't know, something scarier. for Halloween. So and part of this is, you know, seeing what's available in the Megascans assets. And since I don't want to be creating a bunch of assets, there's not things that were conducive to alien type of things in the Megascans. There wasn't a lot of high-tech stuff or things that I kind of felt like would work with that. So I'm going more with some other things that I could find in there. So I'll go ahead and hit escape on this. And so we need to have some Megascan objects for your pickups. You need some kind of objects, and they could be simple objects like just a sphere or a cylinder or something, but I don't know, you might as well use a Megascan object that's going to match your other static meshes in your scene. And so what I did was I went over to Bridge and I did a search on things like, yeah, my computer is struggling for some reason today. I did a search on 3D assets and put in, you know, I tried, I looked through the props. If I look for skulls, yeah, maybe my computer's doing an update or something because it's really struggling. So if I do skulls, I find all these different animal skulls in here. So I decided to use this one over here, which looks like a deer or stag's skull, and then there's a ram one that I downloaded as well. And to make them look more interesting, and also to kind of make them easier to see in the landscape, I made them gold. Okay, I put a gold material on them. Yeah, I didn't do that on the Megascan itself. I did that in the blueprint that I made. So you don't have to like try to change the material on the Megascan. Just download the Megascan and add it to your scene. Another one that I considered doing was statues. So if you do a search for statues, you find a bunch of stuff that you could, like, I could have taken one of these statues here, like this wooden one here, and made it gold, and that would have been cool. It would have been like an Indiana Jones type of statue. So you could do whatever you want. There's a lot of food in here if you want to do pickups, which are more like you know, health type of things, or if you have a theme with that you're on a desert island, you need food or something like that, then there's a bunch of food in here. There's bananas and fruits and other things that you could do. There's coconuts. So there's a lot of different other types of objects, but I was going more for something that fit the theme that I'm developing. So find something and download it. You can always change it later. And then once you have it in your Megascans, then all you need to do is we need to create basically 3 types of things to make this work. We need a blueprint class, which is going to be for the pickup object itself. We need a widget blueprint, which is going to be for the graphical user interface with the numbers coming up. and we need to add to our third person character blueprint. So those three things are the things that we have to do to get this working. And the first thing that I think you need to do is create a folder for this. So I'm gonna make a new one. I'll just get rid of the ones that I have in my scene here right now. My 3 stag skulls. I'll go ahead and get rid of them. I'll delete them. And then I am gonna open up. I'm gonna make a new folder. Let's create a new folder, and I'll call it my collectibles. No space, capitalizing the M and the C. So I got a my collectibles folder, and I'm gonna create my stuff inside of there. I also have a collectibles folder with the stuff that I already created. I'm going to open up these because they are complicated blueprints, and I don't want to forget anything to do, so we can take a look at them as reference as we're going along. Not super complicated, but they do have a fair amount of things in them. So just to sort of give you an overview before we start a new one. So this is the Stag Skulls blueprint class, and I'm in the event graph. And I have, and if I look at the viewport, we've got the model, the static mesh that we're going to bring in. I also have a point light to light it, and a box collider, and a rotating movement to make it spin around. Okay, so that's the things that we're going to put in that. And then in the event graph is where this area of code here is to sort of randomly rotate the different heads as I pull them out, so that they're not all starting at the same place, because they're going to rotate at the same rate, and they would all be, you had one close to another one, they'd be looking exactly the same. So it randomizes them a little bit. But the most important part is this pickup part down here, which is going to get the box collider and cast to the third person character to see if the third person character, the player character, overlaps with the box collider. And if it does, it's going to add to a variable that we're going to make on the third person character. So for keeping track of how many things we pick up. And then it's got some debug code in here to print to string so that we can see that it's working. It's adding to that variable every time we collide with one of these game objects, and then it destroys the game object, the collectible, after we collide with it. And then I have a branch at the end here that's going to check and see if we get in a certain amount of collectibles, and if we do, then we're going to be able to like open a door or something like that. We're not going to do the open door part today. So that's the stuff that we're going to create in here. And then the other one is a widget. I'm going to open that too, so that we can take a look at it. There's a graph for that, and that's where it's actually pulling in the information from the variable to put it up on screen in the text that I have here in what's called a canvas. And we'll create this as well. And then the last thing that we do need to have open even for the new one that we're going to be doing, is the metahuman that I'm using, which is called Erno, and the third person blueprint class that I'm using for that. Now, if you're not using your metahuman yet in your scene, or you don't have it in the scene that you want to try this out in, then you could do all of this with the third person blueprints instead, and use this BP third person character instead. That would work exactly the same, because they are pretty much the same, except one of them has the metahuman model in it. That's it. That's the only difference between them. So the graphs are almost identical between these two things. So I'll go back to my Erno character and I'll open that one up, the third person one. And you can see that I've got some code in here that I've added. We added code that we copied from the third person character. We connected it to our event begin play hair LOD setup, and it goes into all of the stuff that we copied from the third person character. And that's really all we had in this graph. Over here, I've added some other things for displaying the widget. And it's coming off of an event tick. So we'll be creating something like this too. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my new folder, and we'll start creating these. So I have a folder called my collectibles, and I want to right click that, and I'm going to create a blueprint class. And you're going to make it an actor. And we want to call it BP underscore something. And for this, since it's a pickup or it's a collectible, I kind of would probably like to have the name of the thing that I'm going to be collecting on it. So let's just go ahead and we'll do, let me see if I have another object I can do. Actually, I think I'll go ahead and we'll do a statue this time. I think I'd like to try out the statue. And I'm going to do this statue here, the wooden one. So I'll download it. Should take only a second. And I'll add it to my scene. So now I have that in there, old wooden figurine, and I'll go ahead and finish my name here. I don't want to open it yet. Let's just call it statue collectible, and I hit enter on that. So I'll go ahead and open that one, and I can go ahead and dock it like I've done the other ones here. Okay, there's a problem with that one, so I'm gonna do it again. Um, let me just make sure I didn't mess that up. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Maybe I clicked something other than actor when I made it, but it looks normal now. So I've got my statue collectible open, and I want to. I'm in the viewport, and that's kind of where I want to be to start this off. And I'm going to go ahead and add my object to it. So my static mesh. So what you're going to want to do is go make sure that you can see your components, that you're in components, and that you're in the viewport and not in the event graph. And go to add on the left, and you're going to want to look into your list of stuff over here and find static mesh. Okay, so that's the first thing that you're going to do is add the static mesh to it. And you can call it whatever you want. Mine's for a statue collectible, so I can call it statue collect mesh and hit enter. And you won't see anything, of course, in your 3D view, your viewport. You will see a static mesh component on the right, and you can go and click into that and go find your ones that you want to use. I'm going to type in statue to see if it comes up. And it looks like that might be the right one. Actually, that's not the right one. I don't know where that came from. Must be in the other assets that they have. So maybe let's look for something else. Figurine, old wooden figurine. That's what it's called. Try that one instead. So now I've got my old wooden figurine in there. I'm going to move it up. So in the Z-axis, I'm going to type in something like 100 to move it up a bit instead of having it sit on the ground. I'd like it to be sort of floating in the air. And it looks a little small to me. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe type in 2, 2, 2 to the scale parameters, maybe even a little bigger. Let's do 3. Okay, so that looks better. And then I wanted mine to have that gold color, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the material for this object, and it's using the original material. I'm going to go ahead and type in gold, and I'm going to find the gold material that's sort of part of the program, part of the assets that they give you. And then I'm going to add my light. So we can hit compile just to make sure we didn't make any mistakes and everything's good. But then I want a light and I want a collision box. Those are the two things that I'd like to have. The light's going to make it easier to see from far away. If you want it to be harder to see, then you don't put a light. But I think I'd like to have a light. It makes it look kind of nice too. So I'm going to go ahead and add a light. And so go back to with the static mesh selected, I'm going to go to add and choose point light. And it's going to be down really low, and it's going to be, the radius is going to be really high. I'm going to bring that radius down to maybe like 150 or so. And I'm going to pull the light up until it's close to the statue. And I'm going to maybe make the light kind of a gold color. And also I'm going to set my intensity up. So let's try 10,000. And then I'll compile that. And then I'm also going to select my statue, and I'm going to add a box. So just type in box, and you're going to find a box collision comes up, and we can add that box collision to it as well. And I probably want to move that box collider up. Okay, so I just reset the location. It popped up on top of the parent object, which is the statue. And I might want to move it down just a little bit, like maybe -10 or something. So it's slightly lower than that, or maybe, and you can scale it bigger if you want to, if it makes sense for you to do that. It depends on the size of your object and everything. And you want to be able to sort of get pretty close to it, and then you're going to hit that box, and it's gonna do a pickup of it. So we have the collision box and our mesh and the point light. And then if we move this into our scene, it's kind of hard to do this and know if it's scaled right and everything, if it's placed height-wise in the right place and all of that. So it might be better to go ahead and go back to your landscape view, and you know, I'll just hit play to, and then escape, so I'm close to where my character is, and then I'm just going to place it right fairly close by, so I don't have to run very far to get to it. And I did compile already, and you should save too. So compile and save, make sure there's no errors. And then we'll drag it into the scene and see what it looks like. And I can see it there. I'm just going to place it over here, kind of right in front of me. And I'll hit play, and I'll walk over to it and see, you know, is it a good height, or is it, I'm actually standing right on top of it. So It's kind of okay. It's kind of right at my chest height, almost my waist height. It's a little bit low. I might want to push it up a little bit. And it still seems a little small to me, so I might want to make it a little bigger. I'll just go back over to it and we'll select the mesh again. And we'll set that to, let's make it a little bigger, 444. And let's go ahead and push it up just a little bit to like 150. And let's try that. It's a little higher up. So now it's a little bit lower than head height, or a little bit higher than head height. But it's a little harder to see. It doesn't, this particular model doesn't have the various little pieces and stuff coming out of it that the skulls had that really kind of made a really nice effect with the light. So this light is kind of, it's kind of just shining on the bottom of it, not particularly really interesting looking. So I probably wouldn't use this statue because it's kind of boring. But if we want to rotate it, we can go back to our collectible thing and add, I'll go ahead and select the default scene root, and I'm going to add a rotating movement. So click on add, type in rotating movement. You should see rotating movement come up. Go ahead and choose it. You can give it a name if you want to, but I'm just going to call it rotating movement. And if you have it selected, you'll see that it's set to automatically rotate the object in Z 180 degrees positive. So I find that's a bit fast. If I compile and save that, you'll see how fast that is. So you can see it spinning. Actually, for this object, for the skulls, it seemed a bit fast. For this object, it looks about right, actually. So I'll go ahead and leave it at 180. I'm going to save current level as and change this name to landscape collectibles demo. Okay, so I need to go back. I have this statue there. I'm going to need something when I start doing my graph. So I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create that now. I'm going to go over to my BP third person for blueprint for my third person Erno character. And I want to go to my blueprint, not components, but my blueprint, so I can see my variables at the bottom. And you can see I've got a couple of integer variables there for my stag skull and my ram skull. So I'm going to want to make a new variable that can track how many pickups I've got. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm in my blueprint, that I'm in my MetaHumans event graph. And I want to go ahead and add a variable. And I'm going to call it statue. Statue pickup. And hit enter. And change it from a Boolean to an integer, which is a whole number. So now I've got this statue pickup, and I'm making it on my third person character graph because that's who's going to be picking it up. And we can pretty easily reference that in our other graphs to get that variable. Yeah. Your blueprint's not going to look like this because I have these extra nodes in here. Yours is probably going to look like that. So does it say you're in data mode? Like I was a little while ago? Across the top of the screen, kind of? Are you in the event graph? Okay, let me just take a look real quick. So my blueprint is where you add a variable. Event graph is where we're going to use the variable. So go to my blueprint. Okay. Go to first compile whatever you have there. Okay, so here's your variable. Here's the add. You have yours set up a little bit differently than mine, but that's okay. And so just add variable, name it, and change it to an integer. So your Windows setup might be a little bit different than mine. And it's okay if it is. As long as you have, like, I've got my blueprint docked in a way that I can see my event graph and see my blueprint at the same time. You might not have that. You might have your blueprint either floating or docked in a different way. And that's fine as long as when you're in my blueprint, you can get to the add button that will create a variable down at the bottom here. You should see event graph, functions, macros, and variables, and that's where your variable is going to come up. You just have to be able to make your variable, name it, and set it to integer. And then if you're not seeing your event graph at the same time, it's not a big deal. I think you can probably just drag your blueprint out. Like I can undock my blueprint by clicking on the name and pulling it out, and I can move it around. I can like place it in different places, and then I can dock it back again. And I could just make it floating like this. So now my blueprint is floating, and I can see my statue pickup integer variable along with my event graph. And I'm going to go ahead and I know I'm going to need this variable in my event graph eventually. So I'm going to just drag it in there and drop it into an empty area. And it's going to give you a choice between get or set, and you want to get statue pickup or whatever the name of your variable is. You can just leave it there for now. We're going to use that eventually. And if you want to redock your blueprint after you do that, you can just try to redock it back to where you had it before, or you can put it somewhere else. I'm going to put it right there. Okay, so I've got my variable that I'm going to use to track my pickups made, and I'll go ahead and compile this. We're not really doing anything with it yet, but we will be doing something with it eventually. And then I'm going to go and and check, make sure, I mean, it's probably by default going to do it anyway, but make sure that you look over in your details with your variable selected and check and make sure it says like the default value is 0. Okay, because you want to start at 0 for this. Okay, so once you do that, we're going to go back over to our collectible statue or whatever it is you're making graph. So go back over to that node, and we've been working in the viewport in that mode. We're going to want to switch to the graph, but what we want to do is we want to click on the box that we made in the viewport or over here in the outliner next to the viewport where it says components, and right-click that, add event, and we want to add on component begin overlap. Okay, so that's going to automatically switch us over to the graph for this. And we're going to want, and we'll see that node there. So it says on component begin overlap box, because I clicked on it, right-clicked the box when I made this. And so it's going to be looking at that box and waiting for us to overlap it with something. Okay, so we'll just compile that and continue on. So what I want to do is, if I look back here, where we're going to go with this is we're going to cast to the third person character, and then we're going to reference our pickup variable as a get out of that. So go back to this, go out of the main node here with your left mouse button, let go, and we're going to cast to, and you need the name of your third person character. So mine's BP underscore, and then if I put that in, I get a list of them. If I was using the third person character, I would choose that, but I'm actually using Erno third person, so I'm going to use that one. And that's going to reference the metahuman. You also want to connect other actor to object for that. So it's gonna pull the metahuman in with those two connections. And then what we're going to do is we need to get the variable that we want to use. So I'll go ahead and go out of, once we bring in the third person character with this cast node, we can reference things inside of that. And so you can pull out of this as BP or no third person, or whatever yours is. And we want to type in the name of your variable. So I'm going to type in statue. And I get statue pickup. Get statue pickup becomes, under variables, becomes one of the available things to use. And that's what I want. I want to get the statue pickup. Okay, so make sure you've connected both your pins over here, and make sure that you created it in the third person that you're casting from, and make sure that you're using the right name. So when we cast, that's how we access that character's nodes. And that variable should be in that graph somewhere. If you didn't pull it into the graph, pull it into the graph. And see if it comes up then. Okay, so we want to get that with this particular graph. What we're doing is we're going to get the variable and add to it when you collide with the box, right? When my third person character, the logic is if I collide with the box, then add 1 to this variable. That's the logic that, but we're not using a branch. We don't need to. It's just, that's kind of what the logic is for this. So this, coming out of that, if we collide with this character, then add. So I'm going to go out of the statue pickup get, and I'm going to let go, and I'm going to type in add. And I'm going to look for an operator. I want an operator add. And I'm going to choose that. And I'm going to type a 1 into the pin that's there, because I want to add 1. Hit enter. Okay, you can compile that. So we're casting to the character, we're getting the variable for statue pickup, and then we're adding to it because we've collided with it. And then what we want to do is we want to come out of this pin and type in the name of your variable again, statue, and I want to set statue pickup. Okay, so I'm gonna put that there and just rearrange my nodes a little bit here. So I'm adding to it, and this target node, they're blue, and so is BP, or no third person. That's the target of this, so we pull it over and connect the out pin of the add back into the statue pickup in pin, which are both green. Okay, so If we collide with something, we're going to add to the variable, and then we're going to reset the variable with that new number. And then we'd like to know what that new, if it actually worked. Okay, so what you're going to do at that point is we're going to do a debug print text. So come out of your set node and type in print. We're going to do a print string node. And what we want to print in there, you can open that up too. What we want to print in there is the new number that we have. Okay, so whatever that new number is, we can come from right here, out of this set one, and go straight into into the string. And you'll notice that it's going to create a node for that. And that's a conversion between an integer and a string, which are two different types of variables. String is some kind of characters on the keyboard, and an integer is a number, so they're different types. And you want that to show up for, I'm going to put 5 seconds down under duration. And you might want to go and select these two nodes here and just hit C to comment that this is actually debug. Or I'll put temp debug, so that we can get rid of those. Or delete that later after we test it. Okay, so let's go ahead and see, let's compile that first. And let me go ahead and I'm just gonna make sure I didn't forget anything yet. Yeah. So I didn't forget anything there. Let's go ahead and try it out. So make sure you compile, save. And we'll make sure we'll go back to here and make sure that you have a few of these things in your scene. So let me just got one. I'm going to pull a couple more in there. So I got 3 in my scene now. I'll go ahead and hit play. And we'll run forward. And I can see that I'm actually sitting on top of it. So it's working, but it's got to do a couple other things. So we need to add a couple more nodes to this. One of the things that I added was play sound at location, and got a get world location for that for my mesh. And I also want to destroy the actors. So let's put those two nodes in now, because otherwise, if you run over one of them and you stay over it like I just did, it's just going to keep putting the numbers up, and because you're still colliding with it, and it's not deleting it. So we need to add that delete node, and I think I'd like to have a sound node too. So coming out of this string, go ahead and type in play sound. And you're going to have some choices here. You can do play sound 2D, which is pretty easy. I chose to do play sound at location, which is more of a 3D type of sound. And I don't know that it really makes a difference with this because you're kind of right on top of it anyway. But what you can do is, if I want to play at a particular location, I can pull out of this in for the location, and I can go to get, I think it was world location. Yeah, get world location for the mesh object that I'm using here. So it's this one, statue collect mesh. Actually, yeah, I don't want scale, I want location. Statue collect mesh location. And so it'll play it right where the mesh is. And then what I would like, it automatically brings the mesh in as the target there, and then has the location, get location node. And then I want to go out of that and type in destroy actor and target self. And the only other thing that I didn't do that I need to do here is I need to select a sound to play. So you can click on that and it's going to give you the sounds in your scene or in your project. And you're going to have probably some of these ones that I have here, like camera stutter or click on button cue. I mean, I've used click on button. You want to use a WAV file, and you can choose whatever you want there as sort of a stand-in. But I have this one here, which I got from freesound.org, of a wolf howling. And it was several wolves howling one after the other, and I cut out just a single one of them, and I'm just going to use that. Does anybody know, do they have Audacity on the computers here? Can you go to your programs and type in Audacity and see if it comes up? Yeah, so I use Audacity to do my sound editing. I've used it for years. It's a free sound editing program. It's got quite a lot of stuff in it. For what we're doing, probably you won't use most of the stuff in there. But it's really good for, like, if you download something from freesound.org. Let me just go ahead and compile this, and we'll go look at freesound.org for a second here. So if I go to type in freesound.org, and now actually, well, it doesn't really matter if I'm logged in. So if I type in freesound.org, maybe it's Free Sounds, unless it's actually down. Let me try my other login. Here it is. Huh, it's under, that's too bad. Well, it was there yesterday. So it's down for some reason, but I mean, you could do searches for other places that have free sounds. I use freesound.org a lot because it's got a lot of stuff on it, and it's pretty much, as long as you give it credit, it's copyright free. So it's really nice to use. Hopefully it's just temporarily now and it'll come back. But I downloaded, if I look at my downloads folder, you'll see I've got this file here. And if I open it up in Audacity, this is free. You can download it on your home machine if you want to. I'm going to skip the updates for now. This is what I got. I got for some reason it's not going through the, oh, let me see. I may not have this switched. But you were hearing the sounds from the game, right? Okay, well, so it's got multiple ones. You can't really hear them, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. What I did was I wanted to use one of these, so I actually used this one at the end. And I wanted it to, as soon as I go over it, it's going to trigger it. So you don't want a lot of padding at the beginning. And you have a cursor here, which allows you to select your track, anything on your track. And so I just selected the front of this. And I could do like multiple ones and put them in different things, but because there are 4 here, but I just wanted to use one. So I'm going to just edit cut, and I can cut out that entire first part. And then I can go to the end because I don't need all that trailing there. I do want it to trail off, but I can edit cut the last part there too. And you can do things like I can select this whole thing and do generate or effect amplify. And I did make it, this will actually make it to where it peaks to the top here. And so you can go under that or even lower than that if it's too loud. And I'll say, okay. And it basically brought whatever is the highest one up to the top of the peak. And then, you know, if you want to, if it doesn't have a nice trail off like this, you could do something like effect fade out, and you could force it to trail off to nothingness on there. But this one has actually a good one, so I'm not going to do that. There's all kinds of stuff in it. I mean, this is basically like Photoshop filters for sound. You can do all kinds of things in here. And but for our purposes, cutting it, pasting it, maybe adding tracks together. You can have a whole area of tracks where you can add another track and then mix them. I do that sometimes too. But we can edit our sound in here, and then you just file, export as a WAV file, and save it out. So that's what I did to create that. When you save stuff in here, you're not saving the sound, you're saving this setup of of Audacity so that you can come back here and work on it some more if you want to. So if you're done and you've saved out your sound, you don't need to save this. You can just, say, no, I don't want to save it. So anyway, once you have your sound, I suggest going into your project and go into your content and make a sounds folder like I have here and put your sound in, drag your sound in. So you import it to your project. And then you can choose it just like I did for this particular blueprint. So I've got that plugged in now. And I've saved it, I've compiled and saved. So if we go back here again and try it out again, let's just do a file save all. If I hit play, and I'm going to just walk over this first one, you see it disappeared, and I get my sound. Sounds really important. Gives you that mood, that creepiness. It's the same sound over and over again, but it doesn't really bother me that I mean, it's such an unusual sound that I don't think, and you wouldn't be doing one after the other like that anyway. Probably I'd be hiding these all over the island so that you'd probably not hear them right next to each other. So, okay. Everything's working there for my pickups. The only thing that I don't have now is some kind of GUI to show me that, I mean, I have text that I'm printing, but I don't have actually the GUI to show me. So let's go ahead and create that too. So the next thing is to go in and, let me show you this too, because I do have one other thing in my other graph that I put in there, because I noticed that when I looked at these spinning around earlier with the stag one, I noticed they were all spinning at the same rate, and that looked funny. So I did make this graph here that is for randomizing their rotation at the very start of the game. So at event begin play, it's adding a little bit of random rotation to each one of them. And so we can take that right out of, like I said, event begin play and add some local rotation. If we do that over here. And again, you before I do that, you might want to select all of this stuff and just comment it, hit C, and comment that this is for statue pickup box collision. In case you don't remember later on what that's for, you'll have it there with a comment. So if I look up here, there is an event begin play already there, which I could use. And if I want to add local rotation, and then I'm going to pull the mesh into it. So we'll just go out of this, add local rotation is what I want. And I want to add the local rotation of the mesh itself. And you can see it automatically, by choosing the right object, it automatically populated the target of that. And then I would want to, let's just move all of this over a little bit. And then I'd want to tell it what I want to rotate it by. So there's a make rotator and then a random float in range that I want. We'll go ahead and just do that. Random float in range. I'm just right clicking and choosing that. Going out of it to a make rotator. And so we want this to go into the Z rotation. We'll just break the X rotation there. We want to rotate the Z. And we want to rotate it between two numbers like 0 and maybe, I think I put like 300. So remember, this is rotation, it's in degrees. So you could go all the way to 360, but when you get out to 360, you're almost back to the original rotation anyway. So you might want to cut back from 360 a little bit and do something between, say, 0 and 300 or 320 or something like that. So this is going to go into this up here. So we're generating some random numbers between 0 and 300 going into the Z rotation, and then setting the add local rotation on that statue collect mesh. And if I compile this, it should compile okay. Let's save it. And then let's just go back and check it and see if we hit play, if it looks like they're rotating at different rates. And it's a little hard to tell with this one because they're not really, they don't have things sticking out of them to make it obvious, but I do think I see that it's rotating at different rates there. Or not different rates, but it's not, they're not all the same, exactly the same. Okay, so we've done that. Now let's set up so that we can see the GUI with this. So in my folder that I created, my my collectibles folder, I am going to create a new one by right-clicking into the empty area. I want to go find the user interface area, and I'm going to choose widget blueprint. And click on user widget. And then name it. I'll name it WB for widget blueprint _, and we'll call this one statue collect. And I'll go ahead and double click that to open it. And I'll dock it up here as well. So to make a widget, a GUI is a graphical user interface, and it's flat 2D to the screen. And the way you can put that in there to say something that you want to say for like a HUD or something like a heads-up display is to type in canvas and find canvas panel and drag it into your workspace with your left mouse button. Drag it into the workspace. And then once you have that in there, I'll close my search there. You have a bunch of stuff you can put in it. And I'm going to put in some text. And you can just drag that text in, and you can put it wherever you want to put it. Let's say we want to put it in the upper right here. So I can drop it in the upper right, and I can see the text details on the right-hand side. I can change, say, the size of the text to more like 40. And I can pull out the text box a little bit too. And I'm going to type in the text area where it says content. I'm going to type in statue pickups or something. And colon. Enter. So now I have, it says statue pickups, colon, and I want that kind of towards the corner, but I want to leave a little bit of space to the right of it for the number. And then I want to anchor that to that right corner. So I'll click on anchors up here and choose the right corner one and hit left mouse button. And you can see the anchor comes up. It's like, looks like a flower. And so that's static text. I'm not going to do anything with that. Then I want to add another text. So to the canvas panel, I'll pull text in again, and I'll put it to the right of that text. And I'll just, in the text block area, I'll type in 0. So that's going to be my starter text. And I'll size it up to maybe a little bigger, like 50. And just grab it and move it around so that it looks like it's in a good place. You can move it around with the arrow keys to more finely place it. You can adjust certain things on it over on the right-hand side, font and letter spacing and skew and all of those things. There's some shadow stuff. Not a whole lot of stuff there, but you can make some adjustments. And then what I need is that this text, the one that I just placed in there, that is going to be dynamic. So first I'll hit compile to say what I've done so far. And then I want to have this number 0 selected and go down to where it says content. And I actually want to go to the right of that where it says bind. And I want to bind that to my variable. So I'm going to click on that bind setting next to content. Make sure it's next to content and not the other bind things that are in there. And then hit create binding. And it takes me over to the graph. So when you're in that, we were in designer, it's in the upper right here. And that's for putting in things and moving them around and scaling them and all that. Graph is next to that. And so we just created a couple of nodes in the graph section. And what we want to do is if I go back over and let me just compile and save this first. If I go back over and look at this one, we want to come out of that first text node and cast to our third person character again. And then we're going to get player character out of the object to get the player character, which is player index 0. So let's do that first. Then we're going to go to the target variable that is on that character and convert it from integer to text and put it into the widget. So it's fairly simple, but let's do the cast to BP third person again and get player character to start with. So I'll go back over to this one and we'll hold Alt down and get rid of that connection. Come out of it. We want to do like we did before, cast to BP underscore, and I'm going to choose my metahuman. I'm going to come out of this and get character, get player character. There it is. Get player character. And it automatically brings in player index 0, which is your main player character, your third person character. And coming out of that, we want to get that variable, which I'll type in statue, get my statue pickup variable. And then we're going to go from that, we're going to go straight across the output from the third person to the return node. And then we're going to go from the output of the variable here to the return value. And it will automatically make a conversion node for the integer to text. And that should do it. All right, then compile, save. And that should actually update our widget, but you're not going to see it in your scene unless you actually bring it into your scene and display it. And for that, we're going to put that in our third person character as this widget code here. So, and that's where we're going to also reference this statue pickup variable, because I want to actually display it when we pick up the first object. So the first collectible. I don't need it to be on screen before that, so I'm going to just leave it off screen, and that's what these branch nodes is doing. So we need these create count widget to come up first. So to do that, just in any empty area of your third person graph, go ahead and right click and just type in create widget. And choose it. And go out of that output and do an add to viewport. Okay, so if I zoom in on that, we want to create a widget, and there's a class here. You click into that and go ahead and type in WP and see if you can get your widget to come up. Or sorry, mine's WB, not WP. WB statue collect is my widget. I'm going to choose that. That's the widget that I want to create. And then I want to add it to the viewport. Go ahead and go from the return value to the target there. That piece of code, I would like to come up when my event tick runs. So the game has a loop. It's the event tick is like referencing that continuous loop. So I'm gonna use that to bring it up, and I'll go ahead and you can create an event tick, or I've got one here. Let me just break this connection. I'll bring this one up. So you can right click and type in event and choose event tick. And once you have it in there, go ahead and connect it. Actually, let's do a branch first. I'm going to do a branch. And this branch is going to check and see if my statue pickup variable is, I'm going to type in greater or equal to a number, which is, I'm just going to put in 1. So if my character picks up at least one of these objects, then this widget is going to turn on. Okay, so it's going to be hidden before that. It's not going to be created yet. So we'll go ahead and stick the output of that condition into our branch condition right there. We can move this back a little bit. So that's the condition. And if that's true, we're going to create the widget. Okay. And that should do it. I'll compile. And I'll save it. So now if I go back to my landscape and I hit play, I shouldn't see the interface that says statues collected anywhere. But if I move forward and I collect a statue, okay. So my number is actually sitting on top of my other text, and that's because I didn't anchor it. So let me just go anchor it real quick. So here's the widget. I anchored the other one, but I forgot to anchor this one. So it's sliding under that other text. Make sure you have it selected and then just go up to anchors and choose the corner anchor again on that side and compile and save it. And then I'll try it again. It might also look nice if I change the color of this one to something like the gold color of my actual object. Might stick out a little bit more. And we'll try playing it again. I shouldn't see anything again, so I'm going to go ahead and move over that. And now I see it's coming up in the right place. It says statue pickups 1. And if I go over, grab this one, I got 2. And if I go over and grab this one, I've got 3. So I have a way now of displaying all of those, and I have all the pieces complete to sort of take those and take that variable to a condition that will allow me to check and see how many I have. And if I get a certain amount, then I'm going to open a door or something like that. So that's going to be, that'll be in my blueprint. I can put some of that code in my blueprint here, and I can get rid of the temp one if that's all working now. I know it's working because I can see it in my GUI. But I could also add some other things here to make it so that I print out whether that door is going to open and check whether I have a certain amount of them, which you can see I'm doing here. So I'm going from the set down to another greater than or equal to condition into a branch, and then printing a screen door or printing some text that says door open. And if I'm done with this stuff here, I could just delete it. So we could take this print text over here and just delete it. Or actually, let's go back to the other one we're doing and do it there instead. So here's my statue collection code. I'll go out of the execute here to a branch because I want to check if I have a certain amount of these things. And I'll take that from wait, this is not, sorry, delete that one. That's not the right one. I want to be down here. Wasn't looking at my nodes. Okay, so after destroy actor, if I don't need that temp stuff anymore, I can go ahead and delete it. I'll delete this one and this one and just go straight over like this. And then, you know, I might actually want to move this out here. And out of this, I'm going to do a branch. And I'm going to do a condition. So looking at coming out of the condition for that branch, I'm gonna do, again, greater equal to. And I want to go from the set number over here down to this input. And so this is my set number for my variable. Let me just zoom in there. So it's set number for my variable. It's coming out and going into this greater than or equal to, and I can look for like 3. So if I get 3 of them, then that's going to be true for the branch. And I'll just do a print string for now. And we'll just say open door. And I'll put it up for like 10 seconds. So let's compile, save, and let's just see if I pick up 3 of these, if that I get the message on the left of my window that I have, that the door opens. Just as a test to see. We got 1, no message, 2, no message, and then let's try the third one. And it says open door in the upper left. So I know that code is working. And at that point, I could add in my open door code. Yeah, I'll save all. So, sorry that took longer than I thought it was going to take. I'll go ahead and stop sharing here and gonna go ahead and Ariana, I'm gonna go ahead and stop now. The for you guys, you're gonna continue working on your landscapes, but you're also gonna start putting in these pickup dynamics to your scenes that you're building. You can choose whatever type of pickup objects you want. And you can do as many of them as you want and place them wherever you want on your island landscape. I suggest to begin with just to test and get everything working, if you didn't do it today already, to put them all in the same place so you can run through them and make sure everything's working before you go distribute them all over your landscape and have to run across the landscape to go test it. Yeah. Yeah, just the next update of your environments. Not even a finished environment yet, just more progress on your environments. And it's the same assignment that was due last time. So just if you put something up there already, just go replace it with something new. If you have something new, hopefully you do have something new.